Alright, so I'm back. I originally wasn't going to do this video, but upon watching other people's videos and FOMO hitting me, fear of missing out, I decided to join in, and I feel like I'm actually a little bit more successful than I have been in years past. There's still a couple of questions that I don't really have answers to, but I'm doing the mid-year freakout book tag, and I actually have like a whole moment in my reading journal for this, which usually I put this in my regular journal, but since I have a reading journal this year, I have just decided to include it in the one I already have, and I also have to use this as reference for a couple of the questions. So let's get started. So with me getting started, I'm just going to show off my little donut moments that I definitely didn't have to show off, but I did anyway. So the first question is best book so far, and I have two answers to this one, both of which I'm going to put a picture up for. And the first one is Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia, and then the second one is The Wife Upstairs by Rachel Hawkins. Both of those I had a great time with. The Wife Upstairs I listened to on audio, and then Mexican Gothic I read physically. And they somewhat hit the book world by storm, at least Mexican Gothic did, and it was a great time. It was a slow burn. I've mentioned it before. It gave me Crimson Peak vibes. I will die on the hill that it is the same story, but twisted with, and it's just, I will die on that hill. And it was a much better experience reading it rather than watching Crimson Peak. But if you have read Mexican Gothic, I still abide by my statement of go watch the movie Crimson Peak, or vice versa. If you've watched the movie and you haven't read the book, just do it, because it's insane, these similarities. Like, nobody can convince me otherwise. Not a soul. Now, The Wife Upstairs was that domestic thriller moment that I needed. It just did it, okay? I understand it was a retelling, and nobody needs to retell me that it was a retelling, okay? Nobody has to tell me this. I know. I already know. And that's all I have for the first question. The second question wins by default, and that is best sequel that you have read this year so far. And I've only read one sequel, and it's really not a sequel. It's the sixth book in the series. And if you've been here for a moment, you already know what that was. It was I skipped it, sorry. The Urset's Elevator by Lemony Snicket, which I also listened to on audio, but it's the only book in a series that I have read and finished so far. So I'm just gonna show my little spread for it, my review. So it wins by default. I gave it a 3 stars. So it was just pretty middle of the road for me, but it's the only one I've read this year, so like I said, it won by default. So that was that one. And number 3, I have not thought of an answer for, but it is a new release that you haven't read yet. And I have so many. I have The People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry, which, I have it right here. I can actually show this one off. And I still have my stickers on it. I have not read this one yet, but I want to. And I think the other one I have is Delilah Green Doesn't Care. I know I have other options, but those are the two that I can think of right offhand because they're literally like right here. So actually, while I'm here, allow me to add that. And the fourth question, most Woo! That's hard. Fourth question. Most anticipated release for the second half of the year. Now, I actually did research for this one. Because, for those that don't know, this book is naked, but I am reading The Beautiful right now by Renee Ahdieh. And the sequel to this has already come out, and I actually already own it. But the third installment is coming out in February of 2023. So that would at the moment is the only one that I'm superbly anticipating. And then I was like, wherein is that one book coming out? And then I couldn't think of the name of it. So I don't have one for this one yet. If you have any suggestions that maybe I should look into that are releasing later this year, let me know. And number 5 is the biggest disappointment, and y'all already know because it was in my last recent reads. And that is Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. Everybody knows that was my biggest disappointment. I have told everyone because I was so hyped for that book. I looked so hard for it, and I found it secondhand at a used bookstore, and I was just so ready for it. I was like, yeah, like this is good. Like this book sounds great. It honestly gave me like haunted house movie vibes. It totally did. Like I was like, I'm gonna love this book, and it was a flop. I felt like it was so dumb. I did not enjoy it, and I went and read the reviews, and I was like, did I read the same book? Because it really didn't do it for me, and maybe I had a thriller hangover from The Wife Upstairs, and Mexican Gothic, but it wasn't, even though Mexican Gothic's not a thriller, but maybe I hyped it up in my head too much. Maybe it was a me problem, but it wasn't it for me. And my biggest surprise, I forgot to fill this in, so now I have to do it, and that was Clap When You Land, by Elizabeth Acevedo. Because I had never started and finished a book in verse before, and I started the book, didn't complete it physically, so I checked it out from my library on Libby, and I listened to it, and it was such a better experience than trying to read it, especially because there were 2 narrators, and when I was reading it, I couldn't decipher because it was like all in my voice, in the voice in my head, so I was having a really hard time, and it wasn't feeling separated for me. But when I listened to it, they had 2 separate narrators, and that one was just new favorite author. This question's hard because when I looked through the books that I've read this year, there were none that I had read that were by an author I had read before, or by an author that I read multiple times from this year. So I don't, and I prefer to at least read things, at least 2 or 3 things by someone before I decide that, like, yes, this is my author, this is my person. So I didn't really have any one particular author that really stuck out, because everything I read was by someone different. So I just kind of had to say these are our potential favorite authors. So my potential favorite authors are pretty much, I'm going to go with the authors of the 2 best books I read this year, which were Rachel Hawkins and Sylvia Moreno Garcia. And then Riley Sager is also on that list, even though I didn't enjoy Home Before Dark. I'm hoping to enjoy other books of his because he seems to be a very liked author. And then I don't think I have any other potential favorite authors, which I had to clarify in here that it's potential because. And then the newest fictional crush. Look, we're gonna continue on this train. I will die on this hill too. I wasn't actually 100% how. I know this sounds dumb. How to pronounce his name. So I didn't know if it was Francis from Mexican Gothic. But I was like, you know what? Francis is kind of cute. And he was kind of cute in that like little nerdy way where he had like hobbies, but he didn't want to share his hobbies. And then when he did, he was just like kind of gushing. And I couldn't. Like, that was so cute. And then my newest favorite character was Jane from The Wife Upstairs. Because she was a little bit of a badass. More so on the asshole side, but she was a little bit of a badass because, like, if you just think about it as a whole, okay? Are you staying with me? Like, hear me out. This girl just shows up in this town in Alabama and kind of struggles, and then all of a sudden is walking dogs and flips the neighborhood upside down just with her presence, okay? And her fun times, okay? Like, she just literally said, and that's all it took. Like, you can't tell me that's not badassery at its finest, okay? And the 10th question is a book that made you cry, and that would be Clap When You Land by Elizabeth Acevedo. Listen, it tugged at some heartstrings, okay? It really tugged at some heartstrings. Like, it was really talking to me. And a book that made you happy was A Spot of Trouble by Terry Wilson. It was such a cute little romance. I should have read it in the summertime, but I did not. I read it in the winter. But it was a very cute romance. The next question also has a default answer. This is also a little bit of a spoiler for my next recently watched video. But it is favorite book to movie adaptation that you've seen this year. And by default, there's two answers, kind of. Because I have been binging The Vampire Diaries, trying to finish it. I'm in the long haul now. I'm almost at the end of season 7. And it just seems like the closer I get to the end, the further away I am. So there's that one. I have not read those books, but I've been watching the show. And the other one, I didn't write this down, that wins by default, is my most recent watch, and that is Firestarter, the one with Zac Efron. I went to the theater to go see it. I was lost the whole time. But it wins by default because it's the only one that I've seen this year, even though I haven't read Firestarter yet. But what was going on? Because I was lost. And about the time things got explained, the movie ended. So I was really lost. Can someone tell me if that book explains so much more than what the movie did? Did the old movie explain more? Because it just seemed like, I mean, this bitch started setting shit on fire, and then all of a sudden everybody died, and that was it. Like, it didn't make any sense. I was so lost. My favorite review of this year, let me tell you. I have to show you. This is part of why I brought this out, because even though I did not like this book, let me get a little closer here. I have to show this spread off. I just really love what I did with my Home Before Dark moment in my reading journal, because I was like, the early ones I was just getting started, okay? So I don't have very good moments. Like this very first page from January, a time. But I just, in second place here, I'm not going to technically claim it, but would be A Spot of Trouble with all the little paw prints. That was a good moment. But the other ones I was kind of adjusting to like what I wanted to have going on in here. So I didn't really have it down yet. But when I did, I popped out with Home Before Dark, and I just had a good time. And number 14 is the most beautiful book that you have bought this year. And listen, hear me out. I've bought so many this year, but not a single one stood out in my mind when I was trying to think of this question. Not a single one. And I know that I've bought some pretty ones this year. I know, because when I've hauled them, I've been like, look how pretty this cover is. I love this cover, blah, blah, blah. Like, fabulous cover. And now that I'm sitting here talking about it, I can think of one, but it's the naked cover. And I can't get a look at it because I can't lay my hands on it. Black Flamingo. The Black Flamingo, I bought that book. I bought the hardcover at Barnes & Noble in that little clearance rack. Remember? You remember it, the $3 cart. And I bought the hardcover of that baby. And the hardcover has flamingos all over it. And if you haven't been here very long, if this is your first video, hi, hello, I like flamingos. I like them. I have a whole moment with them. They're a little bit of a weak spot, but I have to limit myself, okay? And number 15 is, what books do you need to read by the end of the year? And I honestly don't have a specific one that I need to read before the end of the year. I have some that I would like to read before the end of the year, but I don't know that I'll necessarily get to them before the end of the year. So that's where the confusion on that question, not confusion, but the confusion on what answer to choose for that set in. The only one that I have on my list right now that I need to finish would be my current audiobook, which is The Project by Courtney Stevens. I think it's Courtney Stevens. Listen. Me and that book were really having a time. Like, I was really committed. I was really going in on that book, okay? And then it just, like, I got bored and it just plateaued. And I've been trying to listen to it, and I keep rechecking it out from the library, and it is just not... I'm 70% of the way through it according to my percentage on Libby. And I'm just trying to truck through the last bit of it because I am invested enough to want to know what happens, but I'm like so bored. And my most recent listen with the audiobook like got interrupted, so now I have to like get back in the moment of wanting to listen to this book. So it feels like a task. And then the next one I would just say would be The Beautiful by Renee Ahdieh, just because I'm currently reading it. Also loving it. Can we just discuss that? And these end pages, like, you can't tell me nothing. Like, and I love this map so much. You can't tell me nothing. And like, look, if they're gonna put a map on the end page in the front, could they at least have done one in the back? Like, I'm probably gonna finish recording this video, and I'm probably just gonna sit here and read The Beautiful because it's just captivated me. Okay, I'm having a good time. That was the last question, and I don't think I have any other books that I just feel that I need to finish by the end of the year. I'm looking at my shelf and I can see a couple that I would like to read, but I can't make any promises. So that's all I have for the mid-year freak out book tag. I feel like this was a much more successful year than any year I've ever tried to do this, even in my journals, because I've just been like, I don't think I've ever had enough to really answer all the questions. And I still didn't answer all the questions, but I answered way more than I have before. It was great. Like, I feel so accomplished.